My name is Gina Friedman Armstrong, and I'm here today for the next segment of our pivoting series, Personal Stories of Transformation. I'd like to introduce you today to Tamron Little. She is a peritoneal mesothelioma survivor. She's a talented writer and a passionate advocate. She founded WITSurvivorship, Women Inspired to Thrive in Survivorship, to support and encourage women affected by cancer. And Tamron, we would love to hear your story today, if you would be so kind.
Sure. Thank you so much, Gina, and Erica, for giving me this opportunity. So, like Gina said, I am Tamron Little. And Gina, you did a great job with pronouncing peritoneal mesothelioma. Good job.
Thank you.
But I am a 16-year and counting peritoneal mesothelioma survivor. At the age of 21, during my first pregnancy, I was misdiagnosed with a fibroid tumor. 5 months after giving birth to my son, that was when I found out that I had cancer, a rare cancer, and given 18 months to live. Back in 2007, there was not a lot of information about mesothelioma because it's a rare form of cancer anyway. But the type that I had, peritoneal, which is in the lining of the stomach, it's even a more rare version of it, which is caused by asbestos exposure. So there was not a lot of information about it. And so, as well as I am not the typical patient or have the typical demographics of the patient who would have peritoneal mesothelioma. So you can imagine that the doctors were puzzled. I was puzzled. My family was puzzled. But, that is pretty much where I became an advocate. And, I was just at the fork of the road. And, I had two choices, whether to sit there and, live out that 18 months or do something about it. And, which was my pivoting moment. So the doctor who told me that I had cancer was my OBGYN. So you and I both know, Gina, that if it's not in the doctor's scope, they will pass you off like a hot potato.
That's right.
Yeah. Like, okay, this is not my scope, but, we're just going to hand you over here. And right. And so that's, pretty much what happened. And I was handed over or referred to an oncologist who knew nothing about mesothelioma and who, in a sense, I felt as if he didn't want to learn anything about it. And he was not very helpful. And so appointment after appointment after appointment, it was the same thing. And, to be honest, Gina, I really do think that he was just waiting for that day to come to say, well, we couldn't do anything and it's palliative care. But, I knew that was not the end for me. I knew that I had more life to live, Mm-hmm. And so I decided, hey, I'm going to fight this, and I pretty much told him the last day I saw him, well, if you can't help me and you refuse to get someone who can help me, then I'm going to go find help myself. A lot of times as patients, because my husband and my grandmother were really shocked, they were like, don't talk like that to the doctor. You don't, but what they don't realize is that as a patient, you're your best advocate. You know your body better than anyone else. You know how you feel. And you know what is best for you. You know what your body can take, you know the ins and outs. And as a patient, we have rights. So it is my right to seek a second opinion if I feel as if my current physician does not have my best interest in heart. And, it's not providing for me the best treatment plan. So we have that right to go look elsewhere.
That's right. Second opinions are so important. So important.
They are. Mm-hmm. They are, definitely. And, I think that sometimes people think that if they get a second opinion, then they're cheating on their doctor. But I'm just like, no, it's just like, I don't want to compare it to this, but it's just like if you are looking for a specific car and you go to one dealership, it is one price. You go to another dealership, it is lower and much lower miles. Mm-hmm. And, you are not obligated to stick with that first dealership.
That's right.
So, you're not obligated to stick with that first doctor, especially if they told you that they cannot help you. Mm-hmm. So my second opinion, Dr. Levine, he was actually the one who performed the life-saving surgery that I had almost 17 years ago.
Wow.
So I'm so grateful and thankful, that I had it within me to advocate for myself and stand up and pivot from where I was at.
Mm-hmm. That was your pivoting moment.
Yes, yes, that was my pivoting moment.
Wow. So can you talk about the actual surgery that you had, mm-hmm. what that was called? And
sure.
That would be great.
So I had what they called one of the pioneer surgeries of mesothelioma, and it's called HIPEC, which is short for five long words. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't want to chop up the word, but it's HIPEC. And it's a very invasive surgery. When Dr. Levine told me that I was a great candidate for it, I only had like a slimmer of hope, but the day that I met him, he lit the fire and he gave me my hope back, my full throttle hope back when he told me that he had a treatment for me that I was, a perfect candidate for. And at that time, I didn't care what it was called. I didn't care how long it was going to take. When he told me that, I'm just like, okay, where are the papers at? I want to sign it, because you're so focused on getting rid of the cancer. It's like when you're told you have cancer, your mind is like out, 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 out. So if you're given different options, you're going to take those options without thinking about it. I can only speak from my experience. So it was very invasive. The surgery lasted for about 11 and a half hours. During the 11 and a half hours, they first do the debulking or the cytotraductive or something like that, cytotraductive. But they do the debulking where they go in and they take out the known tumors. So the tumors that they can see, and they, go around and they take it out. And then they go in and they do heated chemotherapy.
Wow.
So it's called, in other terms, some people call it the shake and bake. Because if you are familiar with shake and bake, it's like I'm in a cooking class. You have the chicken in the bag with all of the breading, and you shake it to make sure that the chicken is covered with all of the breading. And so that's pretty much what they did. So they heated the chemotherapy to the nth degree, and they flip you over for a certain amount of time. And then they flip you over again. And so what that does is that allows, so the heat penetrates through the chemo drugs, and it allows for it to spread all through your abdominal cavity. So So it can hit organs and things like that, which is why one of the effects is infertility as well as kidney damage.
Wow.
So that entire surgery for me, it was 11 and a half hours. I have talked to some patients who said that theirs were 15 hours, 18 hours. And I have talked with some patients who has had 2 HIPEC surgeries. So you talk about very invasive. It's not your, oh, I cut my finger type of surgery. I got to get it sewed up. No. And so I stayed in the hospital for about a week and some change afterwards. So usually afterwards, you go to the ICU unit because you've been out for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the reasons why I was in there so long is because my kidneys would not wake up in the allotted time. So, they were doing everything that they could to make sure. And, they're just like, well, we did discuss that it may impact, your kidneys and do some damage, which it did. But actually, one day Dr. Levine came in and he said, okay, so here's where we're at now. If your kidneys, don't wake up, and if your creatinine level does not go down, we will start temporary dialysis. And my face was just like yours, Gina. I was just like, come again? Dialysis? No. So if I had never prayed, I prayed so hard that day, because when you think of dialysis, especially if you had just gone through what I just had endured, it's like, no, and so he's just like, usually it's temporary because your kidneys need some kind of like when the baby comes out and you got to smack them on the bottom, to get them going.
Right.
But the next day he, waited a little bit, and thank God, my kidneys started working. But since then, about a year ago, I was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease stage 2, which just means that my kidneys were damaged, suffered some damage. And kidney damage is not reversible. So even though I did have the surgery and I would do it all over again, it doesn't matter what you go through. Even, with cancer, you're always going to have the side effects, and so I don't complain.
Right.
Even though I do have, the kidney disease, but they are being monitored. I see a nephrologist. I watch what I drink, what I eat, things like that. But it just, goes to show just to be grateful, because some people who had the HIPEC, they have a colostomy bag. Mm-hmm. They are, left with one lung or, something like that. And so for me, just to have a little bit of kidney damage that, my kidneys are still working normally, it's just that it was some damage. So, I am forever grateful.
And you talked about infertility being an issue with mm-hmm. HIPEC too. I know you said that you had one child prior yes. to. Did mm-hmm. you ever have any children after?
Great question, Gina. I actually did. Although the doctor told me that I wouldn't be able to have any more children, and he pretty much told me, which, it wasn't in a bad manner, but he pretty much told me to be grateful for the one that I had and to enjoy, the one that I had, because if I didn't have him, who knows when I would have found out that I had cancer. So currently I have a total of 4.
Wow.
So, yes. So 3 years after the HIPEC surgery and after I was diagnosed with a poor rare cancer, I had my second son, Caden. And 2 years after that, I had my first daughter, Savannah. And then 2 years after that, I had my baby girl, Sydney.
Wow.
So I have 2 boys, Caleb and Caden, and 2 girls, Savannah and Sydney. And I remember going in for a follow-up, and I had Caden and I was holding him. And the doctor comes in and he's talking and everything like that. And he's just looking around and he's like, "Oh, what a nice looking fella. Whose baby? Mine."
Uh-huh.
And he's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yep, it's mine." Yeah. And he's like, "Oh, wow." And then I go back 2 years later with Savannah and he's like, okay, you have already proven me wrong. Just know the next time you come back, you don't have to have another baby because you've already proven me wrong. And I'm just like, well,
and you did.
Right. I don't know if it made me fertile myrtle or, everything happens for a reason. But, I always say that Caleb, which is my oldest son, he's my lifesaver. And my other 3 babies are my miracles.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, because when you think about it, I was in college and I found out I was pregnant. I was just like, no, I want to finish college and I don't want to be called a dropout and, things like that. You're just dwelling on that because I was still young and in college, pregnant. And, so I went through all of those emotions. But then after the fact, I'm like, you know what? Everything happens for a reason. Mm-hmm. And I thank God every day, for Caleb and how the things played out the way that they did. Because like I said before, had I not been pregnant, who knows when I would have found out. It, could be like other women that I have talked to. They've had several tumors through and through their abdomen and attached to different organs, but mine was caught really early. And I only had 1.
Wow.
Yeah. So I am forever grateful.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Oh. Was it staged? Was it, did it have a stage?
It's really, it is hard from my prior knowledge, it's hard to stage peritoneal mesothelioma. Mm-hmm. But if they had to stage it, it was stage 1.
Okay. Cause it hadn't moved out of, okay.
Right. So it was in the lining of my stomach. Mm-hmm. It had attached itself and it was growing a stalk. Into my abdomen.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So when they first saw it when I was pregnant, so I was actually pregnant with cancer. So when they found it, it was, I think they said half of a ping pong ball kind of. And then after I had my son, so that was like 5 months later after I had him, it was like a golf ball. So it was growing. So they did catch it in time, because the thing about mesothelioma is that it is caused by asbestos exposure. Asbestos is a very harsh chemical that they used to use a lot of with paint, with construction materials, furniture, car parts, you name it. And so when you inhale it or you ingest it, those chemicals and those fibers attach to your organs. So usually when you hear about mesothelioma, and I'm sure that someone has saw the commercials, it's pleural, and pleural is in the lung. So those are the most mesothelioma cases are pleural, which is in the lung. So it takes over a decade. It takes about 15 to 20 years to really, show up and form and spread and attach itself to different things. So the typical mesothelioma patient is a Caucasian male in his late 60s to early 70s. That, usually has that background in the shipyard, in the army, or, working in the different factories, because they actually worked with that stuff, held that stuff, and they didn't know, how bad it was. So that is one of the things that when I share my story, I also try to spread the awareness about asbestos exposure and that it can cause cancer, a very aggressive cancer. And, I'm always talking about and, banning it because it's not banned in the United States. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's still being used, not fairly as much, but it's still being used.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that. I thought it was pretty much banned.
Yeah, it's still being used. So what they do is they monitor what types of materials that contain asbestos. But some of them, as I said before, car parts, it was found in baby powder, paints, like the brake pads, housing like shingles.
Right.
Yeah, different things like that. Even makeup.
Oh,
yeah.
My goodness.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. So, with that and it lying dormant for that long, that's why the typical patient is in their late 60s, early 70s, because by the time it, metastasizes or can show up and a lot of times it's misdiagnosed, especially in women like myself. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. What else? Hey, could you tell us also about, why don't you talk about what you're doing in your advocacy work now?
Sure. So in 2017, I became a contributing writer for asbestos.com at the Mesothelioma Center, where they help mesothelioma patients and their family members with different resources like the support group, and doctors and clinical trials and things like that. It's just a plethora of things. So I have been writing for them since 2017. And during that time too is when I really learned about asbestos. And, so I speak a lot about that too, as well as being an AYA cancer survivor. There are a lot of times where, we're not taken seriously. So I was just chosen to be an Elevate ambassador for the 2023 cohort for the National Coalition of Cancer Survivors. I'm getting tongue tied here. And we as the ambassadors had to choose a project. So I actually created a community, which is turned into an organization, and it's called WITSurvivorship, Women Inspired to Thrive in Survivorship. So this is a community focused on women cancer survivors, and I explain what a cancer survivor is. You are a cancer survivor from the first day of diagnosis until the world ends, you know? And during that survivorship journey, especially with women, a lot of things transpire, a lot of changes happen, and we feel alone. I did not find a support group until it was over a decade after I was diagnosed. And so the WITSurvivorship community is just that. It's a community sharing different resources, mentally, sharing different mental health aspects. And we also have a survivor spotlight. And that is just spotlighting different women who have gone through cancer or, who may be going through cancer. And, I just like to share other women's stories. A lot of times, some women may be embarrassed to share their story. And that's okay. But once you see someone else sharing their story and you get inspired by them, then you want to share yours. So that is what this community is all about. We just launched about in September, the end of September. And I'm so excited. We've had so far 3 women to be, including myself, to be in the survivor spotlight. And so I'm so excited about that. And that, when I look around and I see the different groups and the different organizations, it's, it is a lot out there. And sometimes things can get lost in the sauce. Information can get lost in the sauce. But I wanted to create a community for women, no matter what color, creed, or ethnicity group that you're from, and no matter what cancer you have. I didn't want to single anyone out, because if you go looking for a group that is specific to your cancer, for me, I've never found one that was specific to women with peritoneal mesothelioma.
I bet.
Versus, breast cancer. And you kind of see all the great things that they do and the meetups and the lives. And you're like, I would love to join that, but I didn't have breast cancer, so I kind of felt left out, even though I could still relate to them because, cancer is, it still is trauma on your mind and your body. But the WITSurvivorship community, is there for all women, to make sure that you are thriving and to make sure that that you can thrive in survivorship, and that, survivorship does not mean it's the end. It's just another journey in your life. And, during that time, we all have to learn how to adapt to our new normal, because we're thinking, like you said before our taping, that you was in the 7th heaven after you had your surgery, because you're like, the cancer is out and I'm good. I can go fly, I can go join a 5K, but that kind of, when reality sets in, and we have to adapt to after effects from the surgery. We may still be taking medication. After a while, we, figure out that we can't run that 5K like we used to, and that we have to take things slowly. And then too, when your body is getting over the trauma, your mind isn't. Your mind is still processing it. It will be 17 years next year, next May, that I have been, well, no, next September, that I have been cancer free. 17 years. And I am still impacted by it mentally.
Yeah.
It's going to always be there, you know? And so for me, giving the women those resources, giving it to them plain, you know, breaking it down to them, being transparent and sharing my story, sharing other women's story. So, you know, they can be prepared and they will know how to advocate for themselves. They will know about different cancer organizations that has different things going on, maybe in their local neighborhood, or, you know, something that they may be interested in, you know, just encouraging them to keep moving, encouraging them to go back to work, you know, encouraging them to get a therapist.
Yeah.
You know, encouraging them to, you know, keep self-care at the forefront, because all of those things that I named, I did not get those things after I was finished with my treatment. Mm-hmm. It was just you're good. We'll see you in 6 months. And then after that, we'll see you in a year. After that, we'll see you in 18 months. After that, we'll see you in 24 months, you know?
Yeah.
And nothing for my mind. I actually wrote an article, and it was entitled, "What About My Mind?" But what about my mind? You know, I wrote it for Cure today. And as I was writing that is all that I could ask myself. But what about my mind? You've taken care of my body and got the cancer out the way. But what about my mind? My mind was still trying to process.
Traumatized.
That I had cancer. My mind was trying to process that the doctors told me I had 18 months to live. My mind was trying to process that I had a 5-month-old that was counting on me. Mm-hmm. You know, my mind was trying to process going to a doctor that wasn't offering me help. You know, your mind is still trying to process those things. And if you don't seek the mental health help that you need, even during the process, you know, it's going to be tough after the fact.
Or if you can't find it.
Or if you can't find it. Or, you know, like me, I didn't even know to even ask for it. I didn't, you know, I'm thinking, okay, you're the doctor. You've been through this several times. So, you know, I am trusting you with the information that you're giving me and telling me what to expect. None of that was mental health. No. Mental health is just as important as your physical health. They go hand in hand. Yeah. And you can't have one without the other.
No, I was never offered any patient navigation, any kind of anything from throughout. I still haven't been. I mean, I had to go seeking that on my own.
Mm-hmm. Well, I, you know, welcome you to join the WITSurvivorship community.
Well, I'm that's why I'm so grateful for One Cancer Place also. And it's like, yes. And thank you very much. I will.
Definitely.
Yeah, I know it's people don't, you know, until you have cancer, you don't think about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I never thought cancer would touch my life because I didn't have a familial history of cancer at all. You know, nowhere. I'm like, oh, we have heart disease. We have all these other things. Stuff. Everything.
Yeah.
But there's no cancer, so I'm safe there.
Yeah.
You know, then boom. And
then it just happens.
Colon cancer. And it's like,
it knocks on your door.
No,
it's like you got to open it.
Blindsides you and, you know, knocks you off your feet. And
Yeah. And that is trauma within itself. You know, so many people have said, well, you don't have it anymore. So why are you talking about it? Or why are you worried about it? And I'm just like, you will never understand unless you have it.
Yeah.
Because it's going to always be with you.
And that's the thing is it's always just over here. Like it's always, you know, I read something, actually, I think I posted it at some point where it's always that masked person behind you with a gun at your back going, don't turn around, don't look, don't, you know, I'm right behind you. Don't turn around. Just keep walking.
Exactly.
And holding you hostage. It's that.
Especially if you've experienced anxiety and you have to go get some kind of test. I don't care if it's a toenail, something. You know, you're still thinking, oh, you know, what if they find something? You know, just on my feet. But they, you know, it's just the way that our minds work. So if we don't have the coping mechanisms to cope with this thing mentally, it can really run yourself haywire. You know, you can literally run yourself cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. You know, and I was at that stage when I literally thought it was something wrong with I thought something was wrong with my heart. I was going to a pulmonologist. I had a cardiologist. I had 2 sleep studies. I wore a Holter monitor 2 times, one for 2 weeks, because they were trying to figure out if it was something wrong with my heart, something wrong with my lungs. Took a stress test, all of this stuff, echocardiogram, and come to find out, it was my mind. It was mentally. And it took my PCP to sit down face to face with me and to say, Tamron, don't take this the wrong way. I know your story. I know what you've been through, you know, because my husband is a cancer survivor too, and he's a veteran. And, you know, she said, I know what you've been through. She said, what are your thoughts about seeking some mental health counseling? And I looked at her and I'm like, I'm not crazy. And she said, I didn't say that. And she explained to me. And that day I got an aha moment. And ever since that day, you know, I have been going to see a therapist. And I love my therapist. I look forward to going to the therapist. I look forward to it. And I will tell someone in a minute, because some people say, oh, well, you know, if you are a Christian, then what do you need a therapist for? And this and that. And I'm just like, well, you know, God has people in place for a reason. You know, they are there for a reason. And if you have high blood pressure, you're going to go to the doctor and they're going to prescribe you medication, and you're going to do what you got to do to relieve yourself of that high blood pressure. So if there's something unstable mentally, then I'm going to get the help that I need, you know, so I can so I can have a better quality of life for myself, for my husband, for my children, so I can be, you know, the best wife I can be the best mother I can be. And for those women out there that may be currently suffering, I can be the best advocate that I can be for them. You know, so it's always a full circle moment here that we, you know, should think about in that regards.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Mental health is so important and is so stigmatized. And it's very sad.
It is
very sad.
It is, because there are so many people suffering mentally. Actually, today I saw a post that Serena Williams posted. I'm not sure if you saw it, but it's going around. Everyone's sharing it because she's being transparent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she just had a baby, and postpartum kicks in like nobody's business. And her caption was, it was her and her baby. She took a selfie, and she said something to the tune of, "Today I'm not okay, and it's okay to not be okay. And I want you to know that it's okay if you're not okay." You know, it is okay to not be okay. You don't have to be on 10 all the time. You don't, have to be the happy camper all the time, because life be lifing sometimes, and you just, we're all humans.
Right.
And so I think that was a great representation of her saying to the world, yes, I may have won all these Wimbledon championships and things like that, but listen, I'm human too.
Mm-hmm.
I go through things just like the typical person does, because so it's just bringing that humanity back to the forefront to say,
being authentic.
Yes,
definitely. Authentic is you don't have to impress anyone, and you don't have to. It's about being authentic and showing up as the authentic you.
Exactly. Because social media can just have all these facades and have, people thinking one thing and it's really another thing. And so, for people to really be transparent about their journey, I think it's breaking down those barriers that you don't have to be perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Well, we're at about 10 minutes to the hour. Do you have any other things that you wanted to discuss with our pivoting story, or how are you feeling with everything? Do you feel like you talked about what you wanted to talk about?
I think so. But I would like to hone in on learning how to pivot and being able to pivot. When you're in that, if you feel like you're between a rock and a hard place, or you feel like you're at the crossroads, it's your time to pivot. If you feel like there hasn't been any change, it's your time to pivot. Mm-hmm. If there hasn't been any growth, achievement, anything that you're doing, it's time to pivot. Because change can be good. Mm-hmm. And when you pivot, that's change. If you remain in the same place that you're in, you become stagnant, you become comfortable, and things start to attach itself to you. And then before you think about it, you're still in that same place.
Including cancer.
Yeah, including cancer. So we have to, and COVID really taught me how to pivot too, how to be flexible.
Oh, yeah.
And having cancer, I have pivoted so many times, even in my survivorship journey. And, when I was creating WITSurvivorship, I pivoted a lot of times. But you're going to pivot so that you're going to get to where you need to go. Mm-hmm. But you're only going to get to where you need to go unless you pivot.
That's right. No, I love change. Change is wonderful.
Yes.
I find that if you don't make the change, life makes the change for you.
Oh, yeah.
And it may not be in the way that you think it needs to happen, or what you thought you know.
Right.
And
Right.
it happens whether
It
you
does.
or not. So it's
Exactly. Definitely. It does.
It's very interesting. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you so much, Tamron. This has been
Thank
great.
you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really
Oh,
appreciate this. This was a great conversation.
this is wonderful. Can you just tell me or tell everyone where they can find what's your preferred platform of where they can find you easiest?
Sure. Well, I am on all platforms, but my favorite one is Instagram. So you can find me on Instagram at Tamron Little. And also, if you would like to just, check out the WIT Survivorship page, it's just exactly that, WIT Survivorship, WITS, Survivorship. Also on LinkedIn, or you can, find me on Facebook, but I'm primarily on Instagram and LinkedIn. And if you just Google me, you can,
I'm gonna Google you.
Yeah, Google me, and you can find the different things that I have coming up, or you want to read some of my articles. Feel free to go to asbestos.com, and you can find me in there.
Great. Thank you so much, Tamron. This has been wonderful. This is
Thank you too.
Amazing story and an amazing hour to spend with you. So
thank you.
Loved getting to know you. It's great.
Same here.
Have a wonderful rest of your day. And
you too.